Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive.
Yeah,
All about open source sustainability.
absolutely.
We all use open source software every day.
Every day.
I mean, and
Right.
think about like the browser that you're using
Right.
or that app on your phone that you can't live without.
Mm.
Chances are
Yeah.
it's probably at least partially
Oh, yeah.
built on open source software.
For sure.
But there's a big problem
Big problem.
with the way it's all built and maintained.
Uh-huh.
Our source today really kind of paints this picture of corporations
Right.
like reaping these huge benefits from
Yeah.
open source,
Yeah.
but they're not really giving very much back.
Not a whole lot.
And, it's
Yeah.
it's leading to like developer burnout,
Absolutely.
and it's creating all these risks
Yeah.
for everybody involved. So we're going to be diving into the author's personal experiences today
Okay, cool.
and kind of looking at like what are some potential solutions and understand why this is such a big problem.
Mhm.
So I think what's really interesting is the author
Yeah.
kind of starts his journey with this sense of optimism.
Right.
He was really trying to figure out ways to make open source development sustainable.
Okay.
And so he tried this thing with advertising.
Oh.
And there was this platform called CodeFund.
Interesting.
And it was kind of like, think of it like radio.
Okay.
It's free to listen to,
Okay.
but it's supported by ads.
Okay, got it.
But eventually, CodeFund shut down.
Oh, wow.
And that left the author and a lot of other people kind of in a tough spot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And, it's kind of this stark reminder
For sure.
of how fragile this whole system is.
Absolutely.
One thing that really struck me was his point about Microsoft.
Okay.
And, they own GitHub and NPM,
Right.
which are huge platforms
Right.
for open source development.
Sure.
And his point is that, like, they're in this really unique position to actually make this advertising model work because they just have so much reach and resources.
Right.
But then that raises the question of, is advertising really the way to go?
Yeah.
Like, does it really
Right.
address the problem of valuing these open source contributions?
That's the core issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the author kind of wrestled with this himself.
Okay.
And he actually tried out this
Okay.
this analytics service called Scarf.
Okay.
And Scarf is specifically for open source libraries.
Got it.
And, it's kind of
Uh-huh.
a double-edged sword.
How so?
At first, he found it really creepy that his software was sending all this data back.
Right.
But then he started to think, well, you know what? If this data could actually show, like these major corporations, how much they're actually using his software, maybe it would motivate them to give back a little bit.
Okay. Interesting.
So he decided to give it a try.
Okay.
And the results were really surprising.
What happened?
He found out that like all these major companies were heavily using his library, but they were providing absolutely zero financial support.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of like, imagine if you were, a mechanic or something.
Right.
And you designed this really critical part for a car.
Oh, yeah.
And then you found out that like Ford or GM was using your part.
Yeah.
But they weren't paying you anything.
That's wild.
It's just, and they had no contract with you.
No agreement?
They had no guarantee of quality.
Yeah.
They had no backup plan.
Right.
If you decided to stop making the part.
That's a really good point.
And that's kind of the situation that a lot of these open source developers are in.
For sure.
And I think it really highlights, how much value open source provides.
Absolutely.
Because it saves these companies so much time and money.
Yeah.
Because they're not having to build everything from scratch.
The ground up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But without that fair reciprocation, the system just isn't going to work.
It's bound to collapse.
So the question is like,
Yeah.
where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here?
What are the solutions?
Right.
And the author actually talks about
Okay.
a lot of the commonly suggested solutions, and he's not afraid to kind of just shoot them down.
What does he say?
He doesn't mince words.
Okay.
So like donations,
Okay.
he thinks they're just not reliable
Why not?
because you're basically relying on the kindness of strangers instead of actually holding these corporations accountable.
Yep.
And he says it's just not scalable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's the pay-per-use model.
Okay.
It's sometimes called the Spotify model.
Right.
And it sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good on paper. But he points out a really big problem.
What's that?
It favors small utilities,
Okay.
like single-purpose things,
Yeah.
over these huge libraries
Right.
that can save developers weeks or even months.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, that subscription fatigue where you're paying for all these little tiny things. But the thing that's actually like simplifying your life, saving you time, you're not really paying for it, you know?
Yeah.
And he actually brings up this developer named Sidra Sorhus.
Okay.
And he's created dozens of these incredibly popular JavaScript utilities.
Okay.
But they're not like super complex, you know, compared to like a framework like React or something that like underpins countless websites. And so it's like, yeah, those things are valuable, but you know, they're not the same as like a huge framework. And so a pay-per-use model could actually end up incentivizing the creation of more small things, but neglecting those bigger, more complex projects.
Makes sense.
And then licensing.
Right.
He kind of dismisses that too.
Why is that?
He thinks it's a joke.
Oh, wow.
In its current state.
Okay.
He actually tells this story about this startup that pitched him on this like dual licensing scheme.
What was that?
It was like free for personal use, but paid if you're using it commercially.
Okay.
And he just sees right through it.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know? And his point is, how do you even enforce that? How do you even track every instance of your code?
Especially with open source.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just impractical.
Totally.
So
what's the solution?
If donations don't work, if pay-per-use doesn't work, if licensing doesn't work, he proposes this thing.
What is it?
Kind of like gift vouchers.
Okay.
Or credits that corporations could give to their developers.
Okay.
So instead of like the companies trying to figure out which projects to support, they give their developers this money. And the developers are the ones who are actually like using the software so they can decide where to send it.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
And it kind of neatly sidesteps all those other problems, like donations being unreliable or pay-per-use, not valuing certain kinds of contributions.
Exactly.
And he points out that there are already platforms like Open Collective that have this kind of voucher system. And he thinks that like GitHub sponsors could totally do this.
They could integrate it.
Yeah, because Microsoft owns GitHub.
That's right.
So they have the infrastructure.
You got everything they need.
And it makes you think, like, could this be like the answer to sustainability?
Yeah.
It could be.
A way to actually acknowledge the value of open source and make sure that the people who are making it are actually getting compensated.
Right, and not burning out.
And so it kind of brings us back to the core issue that the author's talking about, which is that the current model is just not sustainable.
Right.
And his own struggles are proof of that.
Right.
You know, he tried advertising.
He tried it all.
He tried analytics.
Yeah.
And he's still struggling.
To make a living from his work.
It's a wake-up call for the industry.
We can't keep expecting individuals to do this.
For free, essentially.
Yeah. Without the proper support.
Right.
And recognition.
Absolutely.
So this voucher system is a really interesting idea.
Yeah. I think it's promising.
But it's not like a magic bullet.
No, it's not going to solve everything.
Right. It's part of a bigger conversation that we need to be having.
About how we value open source.
Right.
And how we make sure that this whole ecosystem stays healthy.
So what can our listeners do?
That's a good question.
To help?
You know what I think the first thing is? Awareness.
Okay.
You know, just talking about it.
Okay.
Talking to people about why open source is important.
Okay.
And explaining like how much we rely on it.
Right.
And why it's important to support it.
So it's really about education.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Education and awareness.
Okay.
And then beyond that, I think we need to encourage the companies we work for to actually contribute.
To give back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether it's through direct funding, participating in development, or, you know, implementing these voucher systems.
Right.
It's about putting our money where our mouth is.
And showing that we value it.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, if you're a developer, consider contributing to open source.
Right.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Even small contributions can make a big difference.
Give back.
Give back.
And so creating a sustainable open source future really requires a collective effort.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
we all need to be a part of this.
Absolutely.
Let's take a step back, though.
Okay.
And think about the bigger picture here. Why should the average person care about
why should they care?
open source sustainability?
That's a good question.
It might seem kind of niche, but it's really not.
It's the foundation of so much of our digital lives.
It's in our phones. It's in our cars. I mean, it's even in our homes now.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's running the websites that we visit.
Absolutely.
The apps we use. The services that we rely on every single day.
Totally.
And so if that foundation starts to weaken, the consequences could be pretty widespread.
I mean, just think about security vulnerabilities. Like, what if the software that we rely on isn't secure?
Right.
Or what about stifled innovation?
Okay.
You know, if developers aren't being supported,
they're
not going to be creating new things.
Right.
And then what about just access to information?
Right.
You know, if the software that we use to access the internet starts to break down.
It's almost like a public utility.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
It's like we all benefit from it, but it requires that collective effort to maintain it.
So really, when we talk about open source sustainability, we're talking about like protecting the future of our digital world.
The whole thing.
Yeah. And making sure that the people who are building it are supported.
And appreciated. For sure.
So are there any organizations out there that are doing this well?
Absolutely.
Like, are there any examples?
Yeah, definitely.
That we can look at?
I mean, one that comes to mind is Mozilla.
Oh, yeah.
The organization behind Firefox.
Oh, yeah. Firefox?
The web browser.
I remember when it was like the little guy going up against Internet Explorer.
Totally.
I feel like they've always been really committed to open source.
Yeah, they're all about it.
They're not just developing Firefox as open source, but they're also supporting all these other open source initiatives.
They do a lot.
Through grants, fellowships, direct funding.
It's pretty impressive.
So they're really putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great to see.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it sounds like it's not just about money for them.
No, they have a huge community.
Okay.
Really strong community engagement.
Got it.
Encouraging developers from all over the world
to get involved.
Yeah, to contribute.
So they're really fostering that sense of collaboration.
Absolutely.
That's so important for open source.
Yeah, you can't do it alone.
So it sounds like they're taking this kind of holistic approach.
Totally.
They're not just throwing money at the problem. They're trying to build that community and that shared sense of responsibility.
For sure.
What about other examples?
Another great one is the Linux Foundation.
Okay.
So they're a nonprofit that supports the development of the Linux operating system.
Which is
it's huge.
Yeah, I feel like most people probably
interact with Linux every day and don't even realize it.
Without knowing it.
Yeah, it's in everything.
It's everywhere.
From like servers to smartphones.
Yep.
And the Linux Foundation is kind of like this central hub.
Yeah, they coordinate everything.
All these people and organizations.
That's a huge effort.
That are contributing to Linux.
Right.
So they're providing resources, infrastructure, legal support.
It's the backbone.
It's like the backbone of the whole project.
And it's incredible how much coordination must go into that.
It's mind-boggling.
But it's not just the technical stuff.
No,
right?
It's also the community.
Okay.
They're really focused on building that community and education and outreach.
Because they realized that the future of open source depends on a really engaged community.
Absolutely.
So these are really inspiring examples.
I think they're great.
Because they show that there are different ways to approach this problem.
It's not one size fits all.
Right. It's not a one size fits all solution.
Yeah, you got to find what works.
So after looking at all of this, what are your thoughts on the future of open source?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
I think we're at a turning point.
Okay.
You know, the challenges are real, especially developer burnout.
Right.
But I'm also seeing a lot more awareness of how important this is. And a lot of people are trying to come up with new solutions.
Like that voucher system.
Exactly.
We were talking about.
That could be huge.
Yeah.
It could really change things.
It's a really cool idea.
It is.
You know, it empowers developers.
Yeah.
And it creates that direct connection.
Right.
Between the companies that are using it.
That are benefiting.
And the people who are making it.
Yeah. Closes the loop.
And at the end of the day, it's about recognizing the value of open source.
That's the key.
And supporting the people
who are creating it. Absolutely.
And that's something that we can all do.
We can all do our part.
Yeah.
For sure.
So as you're listening to this,
yeah,
think about the open source projects that you use every day.
Mm-hmm.
How could you contribute to their development?
Yeah.
Or support the people behind them?
How can you give back?
Even if it's just spreading awareness,
right,
or donating a little bit of money, or even just saying thank you.
A thank you goes a long way.
Seriously, because open source thrives
Yeah.
on the passion and dedication of people who believe in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we need to make sure that that continues.
That it keeps going.
So going.
On that note,
that wraps up our deep dive into open source sustainability.
yeah.
But the conversation doesn't end here.
No, keep it going.
We've got some links in the show notes
to check those out.
To learn more.
Learn more about it.
About the open source projects.
That are powering your world.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So until next time.
Yeah.
Keep diving deep.
Keep learning.